Hello and welcome to the Multifamily and More Expert Series, where we dive deep into a specific topic with our expert guest in the area of real estate, mindset, or anywhere in between. Today's guest is Dylan Marma. Dylan is an investor, syndicator. He's syndicated multiple deals. He's also invested in deals outside of syndication, so a lot of experience there. And he is a principal with Rand Partners. Dylan, welcome. Good to have you.
Thanks, Jamie. It's great to be on the show.
Excellent. So for all of those watching on our YouTube channel, I would ask you just right down the bottom here, hit the subscribe button. We've got a lot of content here. We'd love for you to come along and help us develop this channel, bring on more and more guests, and attract the very best like we have today. So Dylan, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your experience, how you got into real estate and where you are today?
Sure. So I'll summarize it. Long story short, initially from upstate New York, as we just discussed, both you and I have similar roots. And moved out to California to go pursue real estate, began working for a real estate investment education and investing company based out of Southern California, San Diego. Spent a few years out there learning all about real estate, all different areas of real estate. Started off buying my first single family property, then quickly after a duplex, and started to get my hands dirty with that. And after about 3 years of working for the company, I decided that I was ready to take a step into something a bit more entrepreneurial. Moved out to the Southeast to grow my own business, focusing on multifamily and focusing on multifamily specifically with the syndication model built into the business. And since moving out to Atlanta, I've done about 6 transactions, 3 of those being syndications, 3 of those not being syndications. And actually when I moved out to Atlanta, I after about 6 months or so, I ended up partnering with the guys here with Rand Partners and moved up to Knoxville, Tennessee, where I've been for coming on to 2 years shortly. And since joining them, that's when a lot of things really started to take off. The business, as you guys are probably familiar with Jake and Gino with Real Build Profits show, those guys had built up a business, that phenomenal business, great foundation. I was very fortunate for the opportunity. They had built about 900 units here in Knoxville. And then we added in the syndication model. I was able to help fill a gap with bringing on outside investors, being able to provide some additional bandwidth, being able to help us underwrite deals in new markets, things to that effect. And since then, we've grown to about 1,600 units or so. So it's been a lot of learning lessons and hasn't started. I still feel like we have just barely scratched the surface and we're still learning all the time. But now we deal with, we have an investment company, we have the property management company, we also have a loan brokerage, so learning a lot about the lending side of things. And of course, we have the education company where we're able to see people operating in different areas of the country and learn what's going on. So it's been a really neat experience, and we're in a great environment to just soak up all the new information.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, since just kind of watching Jake and Gino, the Wheelbarrow Profits, the Rand guys, all these different brands they have. From the time that you came in forward, it seems like they've kind of gone like this. And, you've established yourself, I think, maybe you would more humbly say it this way, as one of the foremost experts in this space right now. You're driving quite the agenda with this group. And you've worked very closely with Vinny Chopra, if I'm not mistaken, in the past.
Yes.
I've seen you around Grant Cardone. I don't know if you've just met him or if you worked with him, but at least you're in the proximity of some pretty big titans in the industry.
Yeah. So let me touch on that. Actually, yeah, Vinny was a huge mentor to me when I first moved out to Atlanta, and actually even in helping me take that leap from San Diego and getting the confidence in myself to go out there and jump full time into this versus and leaving the paycheck behind was obviously it's a tough leap, and I'm sure you have listeners that are going to have to make that decision at some point. And seeing how Vinny was living his life and the life that he was able to create over, at that point, it was about 12 years in full-time in syndication. I was very inspired, and he had a few existing acquisitions in Atlanta, which was part of my influence in choosing Atlanta. And then if you talked about Cardone, recently we saw him at a conference, but there was actually a time where I was seeking guidance from just those that had achieved results that I wanted to in life. And I saw Cardone with the real estate business that he had built up. At that point, he was hardly just really syndicating. It was, he's definitely blown up since I initially went out there. But I actually invested in basically a coaching session, just one-on-one coaching session with him, where I flew out to Miami and spent 2 hours just picking his brain on what he had done to achieve success and what he had done with his sales business, with his real estate business, asking if he would go back into growing the sales business and do it the same way that he did initially. or if he would devote all that same time and energy into his real estate business. And he looked at me, and at the time I was young, I think it was 23. And he said, if I were to 22, 23, but yeah, he basically said, if I were to have invested all of that time and effort and energy that I did into the sales training business and to real estate, I'd be a billionaire by now, right? I'd be 10 times further along the path than I am in my current position, because the sales training business was something that it's a grind, and you always have to be the face, and it's hard to scale and duplicate and so on. So at that point, that helped, along with a few other mentors that were involved, big into mentors, big into having the right influences in your life to help guide you. I think you can cut out a lot of mistakes if you have the right mentors in place. But at that point, hearing that from him, back with a few other people that I had a chance to sit down with, I had so much conviction inside of me that I was ready to go all in and never look back. And from that day forward, I'd really been dedicated to educating myself, to taking action in the multifamily space.
I love it, man. That's incredible. Like, proximity is power, and
right.
The names we've talked about so far are some of the biggest in the real estate industry right now. Cardone,
right.
Jake and Gino, Vinny Chopra, and again,
right.
your name is kind of coming into that pantheon. So very cool. I also love, by the way, just as a side note, that everywhere you moved was warm. So intelligent. All right, so let's dive in, because we're going to spend time on syndication here. That's kind of what you're heavily focused on. And we were talking a little bit before. Let's take this from a standpoint of, okay, somebody's got a deal or two, like you started out single family duplex. Me too. You moved into multifamily. I'm assuming you did more of a non-syndication deal to start, and then maybe move to syndication. That's what a lot of people do.
Yep.
And that leap, it's like there's two leaps. It's from the single family duplex to the multifamily, and people get comfortable with cap rates and all the stuff that goes into that. But let's take it from, if you're in multifamily, even if it's 5 units or 8 units or whatever, and you're looking to jump into the point of raising capital, syndicating, all this SEC stuff. Let's take it from there. So I'm gonna go past what is a syndication. We're gonna assume that for the audience. But if somebody's looking to leap into syndication, what do they do next? What's the first thing, second thing, or whatever the case may be? Just sort of take us from that point forward with the steps necessary for people to kind of get into that side of the multifamily business.
Sure. So the first thing is decide that it's for you. When you're looking at making the transition to syndication, you really want to make sure you have the confidence in yourself to go out there and be someone that's going to be a shepherd, going to work for other people's money to grow. And you want to have the conviction that you'd feel comfortable having someone give you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you'd be able to produce a nice return on that. And nothing's ever guaranteed. And of course, you're going to communicate that there's a certain level of risk for it. But I think for me, my first deal being a 21 unit without syndicating was able to at least give me some level of operational experience, very minimal, but it was definitely some in terms of the due diligence and the operating experience. And then my second deal, I was partnering with guys that had substantially more operating experience at that point in time. So when we did a 132 unit syndication, but it wasn't new to us. The only thing that was new to us in that case was the fact that we're syndicating it versus just buying, adding value, and holding it long term. So first is get the basic process down. And if you have enough money, I would encourage you to start getting the reps in with a few of your own deals or something, or maybe start smaller just to build up your confidence, because you don't want to have the deal surpass your level of confidence in your ability to perform, because one bad deal can really hurt your reputation and set you back further than doing no deal at all in many cases. Now, you made the decision to go out there and syndicate. Where do you begin? Do you go and get the money first? Do you go and get the deal first? This is always the question, the chicken or the egg. I would encourage to start to market for the money first. When you have the money first and you have the confidence that you have the money behind you, then you're going to have an easier time communicating with brokers and looking at deals, knowing that you're not just spinning your tires. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at deals, talking to brokers, you're going to be lacking the certainty that you need. You're going to be second guessing yourself, and you're going to be freaking out when the PSA gets signed and you have no idea where to go for the money. So how do you go out there and find the money? There's two ways to go about doing it. Number one, I would partner with someone that has experience in the space. If you have a group that has the confidence in you to go out there and be someone that can find the deal and bring it to them and partner on the deal, I think there's a lot of value in that. One of the biggest pieces of advice I've got when I first was getting started was to not focus on the money you're going to make on your first few deals, focus on the learning experience that's going to take place. Because if you learn enough in this space, you can make all the money in the world doing it if you're very, very good, right? So when you're going out there, instead of saying, how can I keep 100% of this deal, I'd be more focused on how can I get the deal done and how can I produce good returns and results for the investors. So maybe you having the bumper of having an experienced group that you found a deal and brought the deal to, partner with you on that first deal, whether you're getting maybe, probably some kind of a minority percentage on the deal, but they're helping with the capital raise, they're helping with the asset management side of things. You're learning, you're getting the chance to add value to them. I think that's one of the most valuable learning experiences that you can have. Now, let's say that you have existing contacts in place, or you just feel confident you want to raise the money yourself. You can absolutely do that too, and I'm definitely not talking you away from that. I'm just saying there's value in doing it that route. But if you want to go out there and raise the capital yourself, then, and it's always important to be doing this regardless, because at some point you're going to hit that point where you want to raise all the capital yourself. Start marketing. This is really a marketing business, and largely people need to know, and trust you. And the way you're going to do that is by having some kind of a marketing platform where you're able to add value. I'm a big believer that when you educate people, that creates loyalty and reciprocation oftentimes. So if you can add value to people, they're going to want to reciprocate, and they're going to feel like they know, like, and trust you to invest with you. So that can be through the basic thing you want to do first off is get a basic website done. Doesn't need to be anything super fancy. Get on Wix, just put something up there. And then you want to go ahead and have an email list that's tied to, so they can opt in through your website, or even more importantly, you can add existing contacts that you have, that you meet at meetups, that you meet at events, that you know through your friends and family or former coworkers. Add everyone to the list that agrees to be on your list. Start having conversations and letting people know what you're doing. Hey, I'm going into multifamily investing. I have a team behind me, or I have, you just come up with your story and make sure you're letting people know about your story long before the deal comes. Get them on a marketing list. Stay nice and front and center with them by sending monthly emails out to them, keeping your audience warm, making sure you're adding value to them. Hey, did you know about the shortage of apartments throughout the United States? Hey, did you know about the jobs that are moving into the market that I'm investing into? Hey, did you know about RUBS and how you can build back utilities and what that can do for you, the value on your property, right? It doesn't need to be anything super complicated, but you want to, one, be able to show that you know what you're talking about when it comes to apartments. Number two, you want to hopefully add value and educate people on things that they don't know about. You want to also warm them up to the markets that you plan on investing into through your monthly newsletters and have that taking place. And then if I were to do anything beyond that, I would say, of course, the events are going to be great. Face-to-face relationships always trump anything that you do as far as meeting someone just online. I would encourage you to have a lot of sit-downs, a lot of coffee, a lot of asking people, hey, who do you know that may be interested in investing when a deal does come up, right? And just growing your network actively all the time. Make sure you're talking to someone. I would say talk to someone every single day at first, right? And make sure you're having conversations all the time about this and letting everyone know it's on your radar, so it's not a surprise where, if someone knows you as the engineer, all of a sudden, hey, look at this deal I found, right? And they're like, what are you talking about, right? They lost it. But if you've been branding yourself for 6 months, 12 months prior to the deal coming up, then people are going to be ready to receive that, and they're going to be much more open to entertaining an investment with you.
Okay. There's a couple things I want to ask you a question, but one point I want to further that you made is don't focus on the money in your first one or two deals. Mm-hmm. I think that honestly, that's for anything. Like in our networking group, we have people like, I'm looking at this deal. I'm not sure this, that, and the other. And, I think people sometimes get themselves into a place that they listen to every podcast, they read every book, they do all this work to try to not make the mistake. And it's like, I don't know how else to put it, but like you're inevitably going to likely make a mistake, right? Or you're going to lose money or break even or whatever, but there's no better experience than doing it. So I never say like, just buy a deal just to buy a deal. Like scratch out the numbers. Do they make sense to the best of your knowledge? Ask a couple people and then move forward, knowing, like you said up front, that this is not your, whatever you hear on podcasts. Like, I'm going to make $200 a door. You probably make nothing. You may even have to spend $100 a month for a little while until you get to a place, right? But that experience, that what you get from that is crucial. So I wanted to further that point.
Totally agree.
You mentioned about partnering with somebody in the space, talking to somebody every day. tactically, what would you suggest? Is that social media? Is that going to meetups? Like, what do you, where do you find these people? What's your advice?
I'm a big fan of creating a marketing funnel or a marketing machine of some sort that can work for you. I think today with technology, you can really go out there and do it. Just like in a sense, you have this podcast. People are going to feel like they know you just through listening to your podcast. We have a podcast as well. We receive that all the time because people have a chance to spend hours with us, even though we're not physically there. They say it takes about 6 to 8 touch points in sales or in anything for someone to be able to trust you, to be able to put money with you. Yeah. And those don't have to be one-on-one phone calls. Those don't have to be 6 meetings at the same coffee shop. That can be a mixture of podcasts that they've seen from you, YouTube videos that they've seen from you. It could be they met you at an event in addition to all of that. So just get yourself out there on multiple channels. It is work, but if you're going to build up an investor base, it's going to take work. There's no easy way to do it. They don't just come to you. Yeah. You can have the greatest deal in the world, and sometimes you can still struggle to raise the money, right? I think you're going to hear that. You're going to hear the opposite of that a lot. It's kind of thrown around as a cliche. They find the good deal, all the money in the world is going to come to you. Yeah. In this space, the greatest deals are only so great. They're not going to produce 500% a year, right? So you're still going to have to get yourself known. If you have a deal that's doing 25% when the market standard is 15% right now, you're still going to have an audience that knows, likes, and trusts you. So getting yourself out there on social media and building some kind of a marketing machine that can work for you is really beneficial. And then secondary, I would say, yes, definitely the meetups, definitely going out to the events, and just being very intentional with your time there too, and just making sure you're spending a few minutes with each person, getting to know who you're talking to, and then scheduling follow-ups, sending emails afterwards, getting on additional phone calls with them, and really just doing what you can to make the relationship work.
I love it. I love it. Know, like, and trust. You said that a couple of times, and I think that's a key phrase, because to your point, the money doesn't just flow to you with this great deal. People need to still know, like, and trust you. So with that, let's talk about when you're creating a syndication, or when you're thinking about syndicating, at what point? So if let's say I've got 3 buddies, I've known them forever, and they want to invest with me, but don't want to have any, they just want to, hey, take my money and invest it in your next deal. What do I need to do? I have to have some fancy fund set up or what? Like, so let's talk about what's the point at which you create a fund, and disclaimer, you're not an attorney. I know you're not. Just your experience. What's the point at which you think people should start thinking about creating a fund? And let's talk about the different types of funds within that, if you can kind of take it that way.
So on your very first deal, likelihood is you're going to do a specified offer using a 506B format. Now let's talk about what that is. When it's time for you to go out there, you've built up your investor list, you spent the last 8 months, and you've had 250 contacts because you've been talking to 2 people a day because you're a high achiever, and you've built up a great contact list. They're excited, they're eager for your next deal. Now you finally find the deal, the broker sends you an off-market deal, you put an offer in, your LOI gets accepted, you're about to draft the PSA. What are your next steps? So you're going to first engage a syndication attorney. Again, I'm not an attorney in this case, but if you're going to have more than 3 or 4 investors, every attorney is going to have a different way of being able to look at it. But oftentimes, if you're bringing on more than 3 or 4 investors, you really should be looking closely or consulting with the syndication attorney.
And to be clear, 3 to 4 passive investors, correct? Like if these are partners, like you're going to be the property manager, you're going to do maintenance, like whatever, you're going to have a role that's different than if they're passive.
Correct. And chances are, if you have more than 4 investors, someone's passive in the mix, right? And there's only so many roles we can play. But yes, once you get to the point where you have these passive investors, you're starting to look at a security, and because they're investing into something, expecting a profit that you're going out there and putting the active sweat equity into. And you want to engage a syndication attorney. Typically, what we'll do is the day that we have the actual PSA signed, we'll usually prep our attorney a little bit ahead of time, let them know we have something that's in the works. It's likely to go through because there's about a week between the LOI getting accepted and your actual PSA getting signed. The day the PSA is actually signed is when we will engage the syndication attorney. We use Kim Taylor. You can look her up and her team up at syndicationattorneys.com. They have a great system. Highly recommend them. We've got nothing but good things to say. But usually after that, within 2 or 3 days, you usually want to jump on what we call a deal structuring call. And if you have a quality syndication attorney in place, they should act in a sense as a coach for you as well to help you know what the market standard is and what you should be considering. Big things to think about when you're thinking about your deal structure. Yes, do you want it to be a 506B or a 506C? 506B is specifically for folks that are not able to market to the outside world. However, you can have accredited investors and up to 35 non-accredited investors. So this is a Form D exemption. And in that case, you're able to go out to all of your friends, your family, anyone that you've talked to that is non-accredited and have them invest, which I think you're going to have probably a good chunk of your investors initially start off as non-accredited. I know that we did. And that means accredited usually have to have $1 million net worth or more and make at least $250,000 for the last 2 years with the expectation to make it again this year. And those laws are actually always adopting, and they're actually proposing some new changes for those now. So that it is fluid, but that's currently around what the definition is. And yeah, I recommend doing that because you've already built a pre-existing relationship. That's the key thing with this is you have to have pre-existing relationships. You have to have already talked to them about, hey, I'm going into this multifamily business. This is my plan. These are the kind of deals I'm looking for. Is that something you'd be interested in, right? So now you're not soliciting them. They're existing relationships. So when you're going out there and making an announcement, they're already in your warm network. The 506C, I'll be quick on this one, but it's basically you can publicly advertise all you want. You can post it on Facebook and Instagram and put a billboard up with your deal and what the target returns are, but you can only have accredited investors invest. So it does limit the pool of investors out there. This is becoming more and more popular though. This changed all back in 2012 with the Jobs Act, which allows for you to publicly solicit, helping small businesses raise more capital. But it is harder, especially when you're new, because a stranger is not going to invest with you when it's your first time doing a syndication. They're not going to say, hey, I saw you on the billboard. I want to invest in your deal. The first thing they're going to ask is, what have you done in the past? What does your track record look like? So you're going to have a really hard time advertising to the public and getting people to invest with you early on. You're going to have a much higher conversion rate on your warm network of people that know you and trust you and have seen what you've done and where you've succeeded in different areas in your life and so on.
Makes sense. So 506C would be accredited investors only, millionaire status essentially.
Yep.
So unless you're a dentist and your whole network is all accredited anyway,
True.
then right,
True.
I mean, which is rare. Then, like you said, back to know, like, and trust, right? So there's going to be
Correct.
probably people in your network that don't fit that accredited, or not all of them fit that accredited profile. So you're wanting to be able to take investors from both sides of it. So you mentioned pre-existing relationship, and you gave a little bit on that, like, I have this deal, this, that, and the other. You've had a conversation. Can you get a little bit more granular with that to the extent that you're comfortable? Like, what is, so I go to my meetup, somebody pops up to me and they say, hey, I've heard you're investing in multifamily. Like, yeah, actually we're looking at this 41 unit over here or whatever. Is that enough right there? Have I established a relationship with this person and now market my deals to them?
It's a great question. Now, you can actually, the whole time you're allowed to market for you and your brand to anyone, right? So I want to make sure that's clear too, because that's always an area where people are confused. Can I even tell anyone that I'm an apartment investor, right? Until I have a pre-existing relationship? Yes, of course. You can market for your brand. You can market for yourself. You can say, hey, we're always looking to partner with passive investors on our future deals, right? What you can't do is you can't say, hey, I have this specific deal under contract. These are the returns. What do you think? Are you in? Right? You can't go up to someone and start pitching them on a specific deal, but you can always be marketing for you and your brand, and you should be largely, and then you should be sitting down and having a more formal conversation. This is more of a one-on-one conversation, and the best way to be able to check the box on this is to make sure you have an investor questionnaire form, and you have some form of being able to document that you've sat down and they've already expressed interest in investing alongside you. We keep all of that digital. We have it all in our CRM. When anyone opts in to invest with us, the first thing we'll do is we will give them a phone call, shoot them an email and a text message, and then we'll eventually jump on either a Zoom call or a phone call, and then we'll walk through and learn a little bit more about their background, what their previous investing experience has been, how much capital they'd be open or interested in investing into specific deals, what are their investing goals, what kind of deals do they like, where are they from, just building that connection one-on-one. And at that point, after we have all of that documented and we've had a few touch points with them via email, phone, and text message, we have enough of a track record there where it should be able to hold up if there's ever a question about, was this a pre-existing relationship?
Got it. All right. So that's a lot of information and good information, meaning, I think you've got a good sense of, I love what you said, market for the money first. You said partner with somebody. You can raise by yourself through marketing, but partnering with somebody is probably the fastest way to kind of get there. Building experience, you mentioned about don't worry about making money on the first couple of deals, which I think makes a ton of sense. And we talked about 506B, 506C, all that makes sense. So now everybody's got that education. They're clear on, all right, I understand how this all works. What should they do? You know, I shouldn't say what should they do. But you mentioned you ran around and you worked for a bunch of different people. If somebody's kind of in a space where like, hey, I'm not ready to leave the job yet, but I want to get into this thing. Coaching, like what would you say somebody should do to absolutely get deeper and more granular into this for themselves?
Yep. So I want to circle back just to complete the process there, and then I'm going to dive more into where do you start now as far as getting the education and making sure you're not lost, because I can't teach it all on the podcast. But so after you go through that, you have your deal structuring call. The only other thing to think about is your minimum investment. I would always keep the minimum investment at least $50,000 or more. I've seen people try to do less, and you're going to be hurting cats. It's going to be a very, very difficult thing. Okay, now you have to go out there. You've structured your deal. Your attorneys are working in the background to get your documents set up. Day 3 or day 5, usually the day after we finish our physical due diligence, we're going to send out a deal announcement email, and that's going to have the big picture highlights on the deal as far as your projected return on the deal, what area you're investing into, what you like about the submarket, a couple bullet points on your business plan, and so on. And then they can start getting soft commitments in place. Soft commitments are not binding. They're basically just showing you a general level of interest for the investors. Would you be interested in investing 50 or 100? Where would that come from? Would it be checking? Would it be IRAs? Do you need help getting your self-directed IRA set up, and so on? Then about 2 weeks from there, we'll send out an investor memorandum, which will be about a 25-page full prospectus on the deal, the market, the submarket, the specifics on how we're going to run every single line item on the deal, what our pro forma looks like, what the opportunities are, the challenges are, what the minimum investment is. Again, we'll show them what, if they invested $100,000, what that would look like on a 5-year timeline. And then another 2 weeks after that, so around day 30, you'll have an investor webinar where you're getting one last touch point with the investors, spending some time getting to answer their questions, covering additional highlights on the deal, making sure everyone feels that, fully understands the deal and what it has to offer. And then of course, you'll be available for one-on-one calls after that webinar. But by day 30, you should have all of your legal documents ready and reviewed. And at that point, investors can start to actually go through, review the private placement memorandum, the operating agreement, and then sign the subscription agreement, which agrees to all of the terms outlined. And at that point, that's when investors can actually start to invest, and that's when you start collecting money. Typically, multifamily, it's a 60-day close. So around that day 30 mark, you have everything prepped, you're raising money, and then you hopefully it's a success and you're able to make it to the finish line.
Absolutely. You mentioned something there that just made me think of something, but the moment passed on me. So go ahead.
Yeah, and then back to your question on where do you start as far as getting the education. Those are your really 2 ways to go out there and find a good mentor. I always say is either seek to serve or pay to play. Where you're seeking to serve in some way, you have to really dig deep and think about how you can add value to other people. My always biggest advice to this is when you're looking to add value to an experienced investor or investment firm, the last thing you should ask is, hey, how can I help you? I just think it's a very blanket question, and sometimes to answer that question takes more effort than there even is an answer to, right? So I think you really have to be creative here and dig deep, right? If you're coming from a CPA background, hey, do you need any additional help on your books? If you're coming from a software engineer background, hey, do you think I can help you set up a dashboard that's going to help you more easily manage your property's performance and track things? If you're coming from a sales background, hey, is there any way I could help you improve upon some of your presentations? If you're coming from a marketing background, hey, is there any way that I could help you put out some online advertising that's going to help better attract people into this space, right? If you're coming from a coaching, life coaching background, maybe, hey, is there any way I could coach you guys for free, and in return, you guys could maybe coach me a little bit when I need help on a real estate deal, right? So just think about what is the trade that you have, because I'm sure everyone has some kind of a skill set that they can share with the world, and really think about how you can do that to be able to add kind of a value for value thing. And then of course, in addition to that, they say the pay to play, which there's a lot of great coaching and mentorship programs out there. We have one with the Jake and Gino community. There's a number of other very credible sources out there that you can look towards that offer a chance to basically have your money work for you and then invest into one-on-one coaching and whatnot. But I do think it's important. I do think you have to have someone there with experience, because we're talking about buying, multi-million-dollar deals oftentimes. And to do that your first time around is definitely an intimidating thing at the least.
Now, look, a couple points to accentuate there. I'm part of the Jake and Gino community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I bought into them, I don't know, a year and a half ago. And about 6 months later, we did our first deal in multifamily. And honestly, I mean, I don't know that I could have, or we could have, without the content. I mean, I'm sure we could have muscled through it, but everything was in one place, and access to people, to your point, like Gino, like yourself, others that have done these things that we could bounce questions off of, use the community, so on and so forth. So I'm a big fan of pay to play, masterminds, all of that stuff. I'm a big fan of it. I talk about it all the time. And I believe in the quality of what Jake and Gino put out. The other thing you mentioned was, I say this to people, like when you're networking, I hear there's people go to a meetup like, yeah, I went once or twice, but I didn't really get anything out of it. It's like, well, that's not the point, right? Go to a meetup with thinking, what can I give, not what can I get? And your advice, I think, is huge. And I want to make sure I really, spike the football on it. And I get that question. I'm sure you get the question, like, how can I add value to you? And it's like, boy, my back's tight. I could use a little massage. Like, I don't know. Like, how can you add value to me? Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I say sometimes people are like, subscribe to my channel, but it's more like, hey, I have some friends that X, Y, and Z, or I'm connected to so-and-so, or in this platform, I'll mention like, hey, listen, if there's any way I can promote what you're doing, be happy to use this platform to do so. We can jump on a podcast or whatever the case may be, right? Like, but offering up something and letting the person say, oh yeah, no, that would be helpful. Like, no, I appreciate that, but thanks. Even just the offer sometimes is enough for them to want to at least engage with you and chat with you later. And to your point, the process, and thank you for going back and doing that, the process after you establish your fund all the way through closing, including the packet that you put together and the presentation, the Zoom call or GoToMeeting call that you do. Like, just find somebody syndicating, offer them value, and often they'll let you just sit in and observe those calls, right? Which are amazing. Hear the questions people are asking, hear how they present it. It just demystifies this whole thing, right? So anyway.
Yeah, I'd probably listen to dozens of those other deals getting pitched from other sponsors just to learn the whole process, right? The way I learned that was not through anything outside of just looking at what other people are doing and observing it and saving. I would download all of their packages and save it in a Dropbox folder, and I would have an archive of stuff that I could go and reference and be able to R&D, rip off, and duplicate.
Yeah, it's the easiest thing from a mentorship standpoint for the person you're seeking mentorship from, right? Like, if people don't have time, right? They don't want to provide more time to other people, and you get it. I'm sure I get to sit down and talk to everybody that asks of it. Like, I wouldn't do anything else. You wouldn't do anything else. So yeah, it's as simple as, hey, I got this call at this time, just jump on. Like, you'll get everything you get from me without, the one-on-one, and I don't have to spend any more time. It's a great value add. So Dylan, where can people learn more about you, what you're doing, find you on social media, whatever it may be? Where would you direct them?
Well, you can always find our family of companies, learn more about us at randcre.com. You can also shoot me an email at Dylan, DYLAN, at randcre.com. That's RAND. CRE is in commercialrealestate.com. And then I'm on most of the major social media platforms as well. Dylan Marma, M-A-R-M-A.
He and the boys in Knoxville living the life, all single guys, just having fun, working 17-hour days. It's interesting to see from afar. So
can't beat it, man. We love it.
Enjoy it. Well, hey man, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Tons of value. I really do appreciate you coming on and doing this, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Man. Thank you.